He had his people that he fucked with that was down with the Bloods. G was still going back and forth to trial for the murder and attempted murder. G had never been through anything like that before. You know, Reg already did a bid and whatnot. So they tried to figure G was the weakest link and tried to get on the roll on to testify against Reg or snitch on Reg. But, you know, G wasn't having that. He just wasn't that type of guy. He went to trial. And luckily he beat it because lack of evidence. The attempted murder victim testified that the guy who shot him was actually tall enough to breathe right in the back of his neck or something like that. And this is what G told me personally out of his mouth. In trial, that's what happened, and the lawyer beat that. He ate that part up. I guess that's part of what won the case for him because, you know, G was shorter than the guy. So he couldn't have been breathing on the back of his neck if he was so much shorter than him. The case against him with the Wendy's incident was dropped as well for lack of evidence and no witness. You know, back then they didn't have cameras on the street and all of that like they do now. People got away with a lot more shit than they can get away with now. Eventually they were back home and everybody was home on the street again.
Chapter 7. Protection Money. Mike was a drug dealer who was selling PCP out of a building on 140th Street. He shared the building with another drug dealer named Sunday. Sunday was getting his supply from the lynch mob. Sunday was later killed after an alleged discrepancy with the lynch mob. The lynch mob wanted to move into the building and kick Mike out. Mike approached Lee and asked him if he could help resolve the issue. Lee told Reg and TC to be on standby in case something should happen. One day, Lee saw a guy named Homicide Lou pull up outside Mike's building. Lou was an enforcer for the lynch mob. Reg, Lee, and TC approached Lou while he was talking to Mike outside of the building. Lee and Lou exchanged words. Reg quickly stepped in to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. Out of respect for Reg and TC, Lou agreed to let Mike keep the building. Shortly thereafter, Mike started to pay protection money to Reg, Lee, and TC.
Mike, unbeknownst to Reg and Lee, we found out later on that he was also giving Lou money. If you don't have any protection, you don't have any backbone, you don't have nobody holding you down, you know, they'll come get you, they'll come rob you, they'll come extort you. Back in the 80s and 90s when it was like that. For some reason, I guess he had an agreement with Lou. Like Lou looked out for him and everything. And while Reg, TC, and Lee were gone, they were upstate. That's when he was paying Lou. Lou's MPV came down the block. He had a white MPV. Niggas knew when that white MPV came through. You know what I mean? Listen, man, look out. Just, you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't always on no bullshit, but you know, you see him, just be aware of him. Got out, he was talking to Mike on the stoop in front of the building. And they went over, chopping it up, like saying what was the problem? Just holding Mike down, basically. So when they got there, Lee asked Mike, was he all right? And Lou was like, yeah, he all right. And Lou was like, I wasn't talking to you. And Lou said, well, yeah, well, I'm talking to you, though. Lee was a hothead, definitely a hothead. Like I said, he was no sucker, not in the least. In a confrontation like that, he would have handled his business. He was no sucker. And Lou's reputation spoke for itself. So Reg saw that it was going to escalate. Neither one of them would have backed down. He intervened. He was the voice of reason in the situation. Lou wasn't he wasn't an unreasonable man all the time. I guess, he relented. Like, okay, well, all right, on the strength of you, I'll let him live. But make sure that y'all get money from him. You know what I'm saying? Because basically, like, yo, he's a sheep. You know what I mean? And he knew the Reg and Lee, y'all wolves, man. Y'all a different level, different caliber niggas. Like, make sure y'all get money from that nigga, man. And that basically was that. But he told Reg, like, listen, man, if your man, like, he got an attitude problem, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, he gonna keep y'all in some problems, man, because his attitude and his mouth and whatnot. You know what I mean? So basically what happened after that was Mike, he began letting Lee, Reg, and TC get some of the dust money over there in 140th Street as a compensation or whatever for the protection that they were now providing. So they add another outlet. They were getting money over there with the dust. That's how that went.
Chapter 8, The Lyrical Beast. Big L was born on May 30th, 1974. He grew up on 139th Street in Lenox with his two brothers, Lee and Don. Instead of living the street life, he chose rap as a way out. In 1992 or 1993, he signed to Columbia Records. In 1995, Big L released his debut album, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous. His song, Danger Zone, was an ode to 139th Street in Lenox. This was NFL's signature theme song when they came out onto the court. In the mid-1990s, Big L and Jay-Z had a rap battle on Lenox Avenue. One night, Big L was in a gambling spot on Lenox Avenue. Also present was TC and his godbrother Fella. That night, Big L lost his money and he lost his temper. In an unprovoked moment of madness, Big L threw a punch at Fella. Fella fought back and Big L came out on the losing end of the slugfest. A week later, Lee got into a confrontation with Black Tone. The argument quickly escalated and Black Tone shot Lee twice in the leg. The incident ended their long friendship. In 1996, Big L got out of his record deal and went independent.
Jay had come around with Dame. Dame's from Harlem, and he knew Big L was from Harlem, so that's what back in the day, that's what people do. They go to the different hoods and they battle and whatnot. It had started on 140th and Lenox Avenue, between 140th and 141st. I think J round was first, and then after J round, L round. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, they might have taken it to the park, but I had left. But those two rounds that I heard, in my opinion, it was about a tie. Like I said, I don't remember the year. I forgot what year it was. But I think it was before both of them had deals, if I'm not mistaken. Dame would go around everywhere and take Jay places, and they would battle and stuff. But that was a good battle in the hood. Another time I mentioned in the book when they had a real session, they didn't say that they were battling when they were down the stretch in Barbados. It was a college radio show that, matter of fact, if you go to Netflix, they have a documentary on Stretch in Barbito. It talks about their radio show. Almost every hip hop head that was relevant from the 80s and 90s was on the Stretch and Bobbito show. If you didn't make it to the Stretch and Bobbito show, you wasn't even really a rapper back then. So that battle was, it wasn't really a battle. They didn't say it was a battle, but one MC rhymed, the other one rhymes, and they spitting their shit. So, they were going back and forth. But I would say it was like an informal battle. They wouldn't admit it, but, that was crazy. I think it's on the internet somewhere too. You can get your hands on it. It's classic, man. It's classic. Yeah, Jay and L, they didn't go at it, but they was like lyrically, they battled each other. Lyrically, they competed with each other back then. We know what Jay is the juggernaut in the game right now. You know what I mean? He's been for years. I could imagine if his life wasn't taken so early, how he would have progressed and how he would have grown as well lyrically, because he was a lyrical beast back in the day. Him and Biggie on the track, him and Pac on the track, him and Jay on the track. More tracks, because Jay was on his first album. He was definitely part of the culture, the underground scene, and he was great for hip hop back then, definitely.
Chapter 9. Revered, Feared, and Respected. In 1997, Lee was arrested and charged with carrying a firearm. He paid his bail and was subsequently released. Reg had formed a friendship with a guy named Nichols. Nichols was from Queens, New York. Nichols had previously worked as a road manager for Tupac Shakur. In 1994, Nichols was shot along with Tupac at Quad Studios. Reg and Nichols allegedly started doing stick-ups together. In the summer of 1997, Nichols introduced Reg to a guy named Black Just. Black Just was a high-ranking member of the Supreme Team drug crew. Black Just and Reg spoke about doing business together. That same year, Reg robbed a close friend of rapper Biggie Smalls. Biggie's friend was robbed of his diamond-encrusted chain in a restaurant. It was a similar chain to the one Biggie wore in an episode of the TV show Martin. Lee's relationship with Reg and TC had become strained. Reg was respected everywhere he went, and it was said that Lee was envious of him. In 1997, Lee's cousin was shot dead outside of his apartment building. An unconfirmed rumor began circulating that Reg was the shooter. Lee never asked Reg if there was any truth to the rumor. Instead, he just stopped talking to him.
We was on our way back to Harlem, and Lee was on his bullshit. Calling Reg like Queens Reg, and he ain't down with NFL no more. He's Supreme Team nigga, he Queens nigga, whatever. He doing this in front of everybody. Like, it ain't no shame in his, his way. That's just the way he felt. And he showed it. Niggas just looking at him like he was crazy, like this nigga's bugging. You know what I mean? Like, he was upset because of who Reg was talking to, basically. Lee was the type of dude that he was like really unapproachable because of his demeanor and whatnot. Niggas ain't really fuck with him like that. But Reg was a dude that was real amicable. Everybody, could approach him. He was approachable. He was lovable. People would talk to him or whatever. He did his thing whenever he did it, but he was still easy to communicate with. On the other hand, Lee was the opposite. Lee, if his demeanor was different, he could have been afforded the same opportunities as Reg. He just didn't look at things that way. As far as the chain, it was definitely, when I looked at the episode of Martin when Biggie was on Martin, and that was definitely the same crossing chain. But I don't know if it was the exact same one that Reg took. You know what I'm saying? But Reg caught the dude slipping when he went in the Chinese restaurant. He hit him with a body shot, and the dude, stumbled over, and Reg got him. The dude came over, tried to get the chain back or whatever. Reg wasn't having that. You know what I mean? Reg was like, he told him to get it in blood. You know what I'm saying? Niggas want his chain back, he gotta get it in blood. I'm not gonna call Biggie man names, so he's a go hard nigga too, man. You know what I'm saying? He's a go hard nigga, but he got caught slipping.
Chapter 10: Disloyalty. Every Sunday, there was a hip-hop night at the Tunnel nightclub in New York. One Sunday, Big L borrowed Reg's chain to wear to the club. The following night, Big L asked if he could borrow the chain again. Reg gave him the chain and Big L left the scene. A few moments later, Reg was shot multiple times by an unmasked man. Lee and his friends heard the gunshots and immediately arrived on the scene. They lifted Reg up and put him into an MPV van and drove to Harlem Hospital. Unfortunately, the medical staff were unable to revive Reg. Reg died on September 22, 1997. Rumors began to circulate that Lee ordered a hit on Reg. Prior to the murder, a man resembling the shooter was seen hanging around with Lee. It was said that Lee took an unnecessarily longer route to the hospital. In December 1997, Lee was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the firearm case. Big L was in the process of signing with Rockefeller Records. In February 1999, Dame offered to sign Big L and members of his rap crew. Lee was in prison devising a plot to have Tone, TC, and G killed. While serving his sentence, Lee befriended a shooter from Brooklyn. G was the first target on Lee's hit list.
They put him in the van, and Lee's MPV van. They drove up the block. They sat at the light. I emphasized it in the book, but I emphasize it to you. Like, if you have somebody who's bleeding, why would you wait at the light? You know what I mean? They waited for the light turned green. They made the left, they drove to 136th Street. They made another left and drove down the block to 136 in Lenox Avenue, and then drove to the emergency room. Now, people who walked from 139th Street to 136th Street got to the hospital before Lee got to the hospital, and he was in a car. That was peculiar right there. That didn't make any sense. How somebody could walk faster than a car, but it is what it is.
Chapter 11: Murder for Hire. After he was released from prison, the Brooklyn shooter linked up with Big L. Lee had instructed Big L to help the shooter identify the target. Big L was trying to set G up for the kill. One day, G noticed he was being followed by the shooter. Sensing danger, G acted like he had a gun and chased the man away. Big L made the mistake of telling someone about the hit on G. A few days later, Big L was shot to death on 139th Street in Lenox. He was shot 9 times in the face and chest by a masked gunman. Rumors began circulating that G was the shooter.
They never had a beef. Like TC never had a beef with him. G never had a beef with him. They never had no beef like that. The purpose of hitting G and TC is unbeknownst to anybody. I don't understand why he would try to hit them. The only thing I could think of is that they were the closest ones to Reg, and they were offered a resistance. While he was away, he was trying to eliminate his enemies before he came home, so he could come home peacefully. Now, mind you, this is theory. This is all theory. This is just my thinking of what a thinking man would do if he had the power to do so. If you go on YouTube and look up anything about Big L, there's a tribute I think his brother Don did when he came home. They did the mural over in 140th Street for Big L. There's a big cookout, party and everything. There's music out there. They was having food and everything, celebration of Big L and all that, which is fine. You know what I'm saying? I have no problem with that. I love Big L. I always loved him. You know what I'm saying? My dude. On that interview, Don is wearing a yellow hoodie. The interviewer asked him about the Big L hit. And Don tells him out of his own mouth, it was a situation, this is almost verbatim, it was a situation between, like, divide and conquer between us guys in the block or whatever, and then Lee was in jail. He sent somebody to do something to somebody. He sent L with him. L wasn't supposed to go with him, but his face was seen, and that was that. He said it himself, that it was a plot to hit G. He didn't say G's name, but it was a plot to hit him.
Unbeknownst to NFL, they were being investigated by the FBI. In 1999, FBI agents arrested and charged G, Don, and 6 other men. The FBI claimed that the NFL crew was an organized murderous drug gang. But these allegations were false and misleading. NFL was not working together as a unit. G was also charged with the murder of Big L. But the murder charge was later dropped due to insufficient evidence. Rather than take their case to trial, G and his co-defendants accepted a universal plea deal. G received a sentence of 4 years in prison. In 2002, Lee was released from prison.
The investigation with NFL started because of the murders and the robberies and the drugs. He was going to try to give us the RICO Act. By placing us under that act, they would be able to give us more time. We weren't all getting money together. Lee was getting his money in the park, and he was a different faction of NFL. I was getting money up the block. I was a different faction of NFL. We were only NFL because we came together for parties. We came together for basketball games. We came together just as a brotherhood. Reg was doing his robberies and whatever he was doing. It had nothing to do with Lee. Feds didn't care about that. They wanted to lump everybody together because we all lived on the same block, basically. But the investigation ended when Reg got killed. So they were going to try to tie the drugs in with the murders and the robberies and stuff like that. So the investigation kind of fell apart with that. When Lee went away, he still had people in place running his business. Now this is where it becomes tricky because everybody who was down with Lee wasn't in NFL. He had recruited guys from 140th Street. He moved his business from 139th Street to 140th Street. Some people who got caught up in that case weren't down with NFL. Nobody else went to jail except who was getting money with Lee. It just so happens that G got caught up in it because he was out there one day and an undercover agent asked G where Doc was. Doc was down with Lee. He asked him where Doc was, and G just happened to say, well, he was out here just a few minutes ago. He'd be right back. For that, they have what's called a steering charge. Like you steering traffic, you guiding traffic towards a drug spot or a drug dealer or whatever. And they gave G a charge for that. And he was caught up in the conspiracy because of that. He went to the feds and they did his time or whatever, but you know, that was the gist of it. That's what happened.
Chapter 12, The Final Game. Freshly released from prison, Lee was hell-bent on revenge. He was telling everyone that he was going to take control of the block again. One evening, he got into a heated argument with a guy named Stash. There was a rumor that G hid out in Stash's uncle's apartment after killing Big L. During the heated verbal exchange, Lee threatened to kill Stash and his uncle. Stash did not take kindly to Lee's threats. Lee was pronounced dead at the scene. G was released from prison in 2002. For a brief period of time, he worked at Murder Inc. Records. In 2011, G caught a gun charge and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He was released in 2015 and moved back to 139th Street.
Every now and then, you know, he'd get a vibe or whatever, you know, he would keep his gun on him because he didn't know if somebody was ever going to try him because of the Big L situation. Or maybe try him for some other shit they might have felt that he did or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? So he definitely felt there was a danger, you know, and he moved that way. He moved accordingly. But, you know, when he came home again this time, you know, he felt there was a danger, but he also, you know, he had a different mindset. So it was like, you know, like this, it's been almost 20 years. Like, I don't fuck with nobody right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm not fucking with nobody. I just want to, you know what I'm saying? Been to jail 3 and 4 times and doing bid, especially doing a bid for something he ain't had nothing to do with. Then just coming home from a bid. He's older now. When you get older, you're doing bids now. But your mindset should change. If it doesn't change, then something's wrong with you. I'm just assuming that, you know, his whole thinking was different. Like, he wasn't talking about street shit anymore. A few times that I did see him, like, he wasn't really talking about street shit, especially no gun shit. You know, I mean, he wasn't on that. He wasn't talking about robbing nobody. He wasn't talking about picking up his gun. Like, I need to do this. I need to get some money for this. He never was doing that. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't talking about that. And but he definitely felt there was a danger, and you know, him being out there and being available, being vulnerable in a vulnerable state. Like, sometimes they say, you know, when you get ready to die, people know when their time is ending or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I guess he just was like, yo, and you can't quote me on it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just figuring this in maybe his mindset. Like, yo, listen, man. Like, whatever happens, it happens. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder or whatever. So I'm just going to live my life, man. I'm not fucking with nobody. It's been this long. I'm not fucking with nobody. Nobody fucking with me. Listen, I'm just going to live. I'm not going to bother nobody if nobody bothers me. Some people didn't look at it that way. Somebody didn't look at it that way. They saw him outside at night. He was standing outside. He's standing in the middle of the street. Somebody crept up from behind him and shot him in the back of his head. somebody didn't want him here anymore, so they acted accordingly.
On June 23, 2016, G was gunned down as he stood outside on 139th and Lenox. He was shot 3 times by a hooded man. To this very day, the murders of Reg, Big L, and G still remain unsolved. This is the story of the rise and fall of the 139th Street NFL crew.